Welcome to Smart Remarks. The beard's gone, the hair's short, lost a couple pounds. It's just like we're back in the Bush years. God help us all. So I'm at the gym the other day trying to work my fat self into shape. I look up and there he was. George W. Bush is back with a new memoir called Decision Points. He was on the Oprah program, and I thought to myself, you know, this never occurred to me while he was in office, but he really kind of reminds me of Steve Martin. Maybe it never occurred to me because the Bush years never left me in much of a laughing mood. He was discussing a lot of issues with Oprah, including his decision to bail out the banks in 2008, and I thought, you know, this is a good point because our friends on the outraged right seem to think that Obama and all the socialist, liberal, fascist Democrats are entirely responsible for our financial predicament. Yet here's Bush saying he'd do it all again. That's gotta hurt. There were also some classy moments. He refuses to criticize Obama. He wouldn't weigh in on Sarah Palin. And I thought to myself, you know, there's a lot about the Bush years that I hated. I hated the war in Iraq. I hated the authoritarianism that reared its ugly head. I hated a lot of the economic policies. And I really didn't like the man himself. But now it seems clear to me that he was merely a salesman for the conservative economic philosophy, the conservative broader philosophy that really ruled the roost during that era and is responsible for where we are today. It's never the politician that interests me as much as the people who invest so much of themselves in the politician. And a lot of Bush's biggest fans, frankly, I thought were wasting their time. You know, the values voters loved him, but abortion wasn't criminalized on his watch. The gays weren't pushed back into the closet, and the reality was that was never going to happen. These simply weren't among Bush's priorities. The war on terror was, and the war in Iraq was, but that too is interesting because all the people now who are so outraged about big government like big government just fine back then. The people who carry the signs about tyranny at the tea parties are the very same people who backed the idea of warrantless wiretapping then. The people who scream so loudly about government spending never peeped about it back then, and in fact were among the biggest supporters of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, because apparently wars don't cost money or something. In the end, Bush's legacy is still with us in terms of our continued financial uncertainty. That's not to blame him for everything that's happened, but it is to say that the Bush era represented the pinnacle of an era where high finance consolidated its control over the republic. The rich got much richer, the not rich were enticed via asset bubbles to spend, spend, spend. It was inevitable that it was all going to come crashing down, and it did in 2008. We're still dealing with the fallout today. We are going to be dealing with it for a very long time. And so look, I tell you what, I hope Decision Points is a big hit. You know, nostalgia always is. I myself am nostalgic for the Bush era because I was a lot younger and weighed a lot less back in those days. But already, you got guys like Rush Limbaugh interviewing Bush and saying, "Don't you get a lot of people who say they miss you?" Tough as things are, let's not think that going back to the Bush years is anything we should aspire to do. Once was more than enough.
You spend an entire chapter in the book talking about the financial meltdown last year of your presidency. In that year, the country lost about 2.6 million jobs. The banking system nearly collapsed. The housing market did collapse. And we fell into the deepest recession since the Great Depression. How much of the blame for that should be laid at your feet and on your policies?
Well, I think a lot of the blame should be laid on a lot of people, including my administration.